This car needs little introduction. The Tesla Model 3 is one of the world's best-selling electric vehicles, and it's about a year on from a substantial facelift that saw it win Drive's Car of the Year Best Urban Electric Vehicle under $100,000. But the competition is coming, so meet the Volvo EX30, and it promised to be one of the most attractively priced electric cars to wear a European badge. In this video, we're going to go through their interiors, how much equipment you get for the money, what they like to drive, and test things like driving range, fast charging speeds, acceleration, and braking. Let's check them out. Before we go any further, it's worth acknowledging the similarities between these two cars, because even though they're not direct rivals in the truest sense of the word, there's still plenty in common. They both have minimalist interiors, they both have healthy driving ranges, sporting performance, and most importantly, they're both priced from about $65,000 before on-road costs and a few options on the Tesla. They're really close on price, even though their body styles couldn't be any more different. How much they cost? Let me tell you. At the time of filming, the Tesla Model 3 long range is priced from $64,900 before on-road costs, while the Volvo EX30 single motor extended range Ultra is priced from $66,290 before on-road costs. Our Tesla is optioned with $2,600 Ultra Red paint, a $1,500 white interior, and $1,800 19-inch alloy wheels, which push its drive-away price in New South Wales to about $76,500 drive-away. Meanwhile, with no-cost yellow paint and a grey interior, the Volvo is priced from about $74,000 drive-away in New South Wales, excluding the cost of 20-inch wheels offered as an accessory, which were thrown into the base price of our test vehicle, but would cost customers $4,229 plus GST to fit to their own car. Shared standard features include LED headlights, a panoramic glass roof, hands-free power tailgate, power adjustable heated front seats, Bluetooth, satellite navigation, wireless phone charging, dual zone climate control, and a suite of safety systems including adaptive cruise control, lane centering, and blind spot monitoring. Features exclusive to the Volvo include 19-inch alloy wheels, a tyre repair kit, wool blend seat upholstery, a 12.3-inch touchscreen with Google Apps and wireless Apple CarPlay, a 9-speaker Harman Kardon sound system with soundbar, rear cross traffic alert, automatic parking, and a 360-degree camera. Meanwhile, the Tesla includes 18-inch alloy wheels, synthetic leather look trim, ventilated front seats, heated outboard rear seats, a second wireless phone charger, a 15.4-inch touchscreen, an 8-inch rear passenger touchscreen, blind spot cameras, and a 17-speaker sound system. The Model 3 got an interior spruce up with a facelift late last year, and I have to say, it now has the design and the materials to back up that price. The centerpiece is still this massive 15.4-inch touchscreen. It's a bit larger than before, and thinner bezels, and it's also a brighter screen. I've got to say, as far as big screens go in cars, this is definitely the benchmark. The software is super intuitive, really fast response times, flicking between menus. It's like using a big smartphone in the car. Now, of course, it is all touch only, and it does control everything in the car, from opening the glove box to moving the mirrors, to obviously basic things like radio, climate control, things like that. We still prefer dials for air temperature and fan speed, but to be honest, as far as screens go, this is a pretty good one. Now, it is a bit daunting at first, and there is a bit of a learning curve, 100%, but the more you drive the car, when you set up your mirrors, set up your driving position, and connect your phone and things like that, it does, feels a bit set and forget, and you don't really have to worry about it too much ever again. It does really work for you, and the screen is great the more you own the car. It also includes access to a Tesla phone app, so things like keyless entry, remote control, the doors, the locks, the climate control, things like that, all from your phone. Tesla has been doing this for a very long time, this connected car type of things. Other brands have followed, and I have to say, they are still the benchmark in that area. Now, as with the Model 3, since day one, there's no instrument display or head-up display in front of the driver, nowhere directly in front of me where the speed is projected. Look, not for everyone, but I will say you do get used to it the more you drive the car, though it would still be nice to have a head-up display given how strictly enforced speed limits are in Australia. Now, the elephant in the room with this updated Model 3 is the lack of stalks behind the steering wheel. Your indicators are now on the steering wheel with little sort of touch-sensitive buttons that are stacked on top of each other there, and your gear shifter is on the side of the touchscreen. Now, we'll talk about that more in the driving section, but it's not necessarily a step forward in ergonomics, as you can probably guess. It does take some getting used to, but it's still, even once you own the car for a while, it's not fantastic. Now, in the screen, you've got FM and DAB digital radio. There's no AM. That might be a bugbear for some buyers of this car. You've also got satellite navigation that is powered by Google Maps, so it's really fast and actually knows what it's doing when it's directing you around the place. Now, there's still no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. That's always been a Tesla thing, and I've got to say, for some people, that is a downside. For me, I like using Waze, and there's no support for that in this system. But I will say Tesla has made steps to actually make this screen better and give you some of the apps you get in CarPlay and Android Auto in the system. For example, Satellite navigation powered by Google. It now has some speed camera alerts as well for fixed speed cameras. You've got Spotify and Apple Music built into the system, which are apps you'd probably use in Apple CarPlay anyway. And the navigation also includes locations of chargers that aren't Tesla superchargers. That's something that Tesla hasn't always had, but something they've added in the last year and means you don't have to use an app like PlugShare, for example, to see where you can plug in this car. There's also voice control using a button on the steering wheel here. Now, a lot of Tesla owners do swear by that system and love it instead of touching the screen in the normal way. We've also got over-the-air software updates, so the car is getting better all the time. For example, recent updates, this main car screen here with the full screen view of the car, that's something that's added quite recently, as well as the speed camera chime I mentioned, and things like support for the Audible audiobook app. Tesla is making the system better over time, so things that may not be here today may be available in the future, but then again, don't buy a car based on what's coming in the future. Have a look at what's here now, and fortunately, what is here now is pretty good. Now, in terms of the fundamentals, these seats are new for the facelifted model last year. They're super comfortable on long drives. Not the last word in support, but then again, you have the performance model available for that. Heating, ventilation, as well as power adjustment and driver lumbar on this side. And I've got to say, they're a lot more comfortable than what you used to get in the Model 3. And overall, they're pretty nice on long drives. Now, this car has the white upholstery option. It's about a $1,500 option at the time we're filming this video. Now, it looks really good in person, but I will say this car has 4,000 Ks on the clock and it's already starting to mark. Now, it is synthetic leather look trim. It's not real leather, so it's meant to be easier to clean than normal leather. But to be honest, if you're just worried, just get the black. It looks great, particularly with this red paint job on the outside. Now, the driving position in this car is great and always has been great in the Model 3. Excellent visibility out the front, great out the sides, though it's not so good out the rear. The boot is particularly high. I wish the seat went a little bit lower, but for the most part, it's really nice, and there's plenty of space for a tall driver here. Now, this steering wheel, it is quite small, and it is quite a thick rim, which not everyone will like. I do, but then again, not everyone will. You've got these two dials on them that control different things depending on what mode you're in. So the left one is volume normally, as well as the right one can be speed on cruise control, but they control different things depending on the menu they've selected in the infotainment screen. Now, there is, of course, no start button in this car. You just get in it, it knows what driver's in it based on the key that's unlocked the car, and it just starts, and you can just go. Put your foot on the brake, shift into drive, and you're away. Now, in terms of storage in this car, you've got a cubby hole here, 2 cup holders between the front seats, pretty decently sized center console bin, door bins that are flock lined and have enough space for 1 or maybe even 2 bottles if you're feeling a bit ambitious. Now, of course, there is a glove box as well, but it is on the small side, and it does need to be opened through the touchscreen. Now, which may sound like a problem, but then again, when was the last time you actually used your glove box? Exactly. They've got some great materials around the place, got some leather look kind of feeling things on the dash, got this nice felt material behind the screen here. It all feels quite nice and quite premium. Amenities, you've got dual wireless phone chargers, heated seats as I mentioned, heated steering wheel as well. There's this nice ambient light strip around the dash that looks fantastic at night, and you can change the color based on your settings and what you like. And also worth mentioning the sound system. 17 speakers in this car. It is absolutely fantastic. There aren't many cars at this price, or even cars that cost twice the price, that have a sound system as good as this. It's unbelievably loud, and it will satisfy even the most hardcore audiophiles. In the EX30, it's very clear where the inspiration for this car has come from. Again, got one screen, but this time with portrait, not landscape, and it's only 12.3 inches, not 15.4 like that Tesla. And obviously it controls everything in the car, from showing your speed, to your mirror controls, to everything, pretty much everything that there is to control in this vehicle. And in many ways, the cabin's even more minimalist than that Tesla. You've got no normal fixed center console, just a big open area for stuff. A single glove box in the center, not on the passenger side like in that Model 3. The door bins are super open. Overall, it's a really minimalist and quite Scandinavian space, to use that cliche. Now, starting with the screen, obviously it's very much like Tesla. They're trying to go for that Tesla-style vibe with the speed at the top and just everything in that display. However, the software is just not quite as good. It's not as quick to respond as that Tesla. It's not bad, and it's definitely a lot better than some other infotainment screens on the market, but it's still a little bit of a loading time between menus, and it just could be better. It's also not the most intuitive in how it's laid out. Things like, for example, the air temperature is in one menu, and the fan speed is in another menu. I don't know why they've done that. It's just an odd choice, and one of those things that Tesla has ironed out over the last 10 years that has been making massive screens in cars that Volvo just needs to sort out here. Now, some of the other menus in this car and the layout of them are a little bit convoluted. Now, I'm sure you get used to it the more you have this car, the more you drive it, but still there's just room for improvement. I'll give you 2 examples. While the Tesla's mirrors auto tilt and reverse, these ones in the Volvo do not. So that means you pull up to a parking space, before you can even put the car in reverse, you have to press the car settings button, then press mirrors and lower the mirrors, then drop them and see the curb and that's before you can even put the car in reverse gear. It really did get on our nerves during our time with this car, particularly given it's not ours and we didn't want to curb these shiny alloys. The other one is the cruise control. So if you're on the highway and want to change the distance setting to the car in front, you can't just do that with a button on the steering wheel like you can in the Tesla. You have to go to car settings, driving, and then change it between short, medium, and long. And based on our experience, it seems to reset every time you get in the car, at least with this user profile. So it's just annoying. It's 3 taps deep, and it's just unnecessary when a button on the steering wheel would do, like the Tesla and pretty much every car on sale today. Now, some other glitches we've had with this screen during our time with the car. Spotify keeps logging me out about half the time I get into this car to drive it. Half the screen would go into dark mode and half the screen in light mode on one occasion. But the biggest issue of all was an electric drive fault error that came up on the screen. The car started beeping its head off, telling us to service the car as soon as possible. Now, we got out of the car, restarted it, locked it, came back in. It seemed to fix the issue and all the sounds went away and it hasn't come back. And that was a couple of days ago. But still, it's not very good for a brand new car with a brand new system. There are some glitches that really need to be ironed out by Volvo as soon as possible. Now, the car does have over-the-air updates, so it can download software from the cloud and improve some of these systems. Now, Volvo has already started doing that. In the first couple of months, this car has been on the market both in Australia and overseas, but still there's more work to be done, particularly with the layout of this menu and some of the glitches we've found. Both us here driving this car in Sydney, as well as my colleagues in Melbourne that have had this car through the Drive garage. Now, some positives of this system, you do have wireless Apple CarPlay. Not quite yet as of August 2024, but it will be coming later down the track, Volvo says. We've also got FM radio, DAB digital radio, Bluetooth, as well as a whole bunch of different Google apps on this system. So Google Maps on the infotainment screen, Google Assistant, as well as Google Play Store to download more applications. Spotify is also installed, which has helped, given there's no Apple CarPlay yet at the time we're testing this vehicle. Overall, look, there's definitely room for improvement here, but it is still a really good infotainment system that will only get better with time, though I'd still have the one in the Tesla over this. Now, as with that Tesla, there's no start button to turn the car on. You just get in the car, foot on the brake, and you're ready to go. However, there are stalks behind the steering wheel, thankfully, with a gear shifter on the right-hand side and indicator on the left. I don't know what was wrong with this system. Tesla should really take note and bring back the stalks in the Model 3. Now, Volvo has taken more inspiration from Tesla in the key. Now, there'll be a phone as a key feature coming a little bit later down the track. But in the meantime, you have this key fob, which actually has no buttons on it, unusually. Now, that means that the car will automatically lock when you walk away from it with this key in your pocket, as we can also touch it on the B-pillar behind the driver's door to make it lock manually. But still, it's a bit annoying. If you're standing far away, you're trying to tell someone to go get something from the car, you can't actually just press a button and unlock it. You have to go towards the car or give them the key and they go towards the car to unlock it. It's just a little bit annoying. And while we're talking about locking, both cars obviously don't have start buttons, but whereas the Tesla, when you open the door and get out of the car, your music will lower in volume and then turn off completely. This car, it continues blaring at the same volume you had it before. So if you've got loud music, for example, on Spotify, listening to it in the car, open the door, it'll continue blaring at the same volume, and then you close the door, and you can hear your music still going in the car until you walk far enough away that it locks. It's just a little bit annoying, a little bit of an oversight in the software that I'm sure can be fixed pretty easily, but just one of those things that Volvo hasn't quite done that Tesla has in that Model 3. So that was all tech overload. Let's chat about some of the more fundamental parts of this car, including these front seats. This car here has a grey interior, so these seats have a nice sort of wool blend upholstery. Now, that's not such a bad thing. It's not leather. These are really, really comfortable. Good support for someone of my frame. I'm 6'1", decent space as well. They've got heating and power adjustment in the front row, as well as lumbar support on the driver's side. The steering wheel is trimmed in leather. It's quite a thin rim compared to what you get in the Tesla, and the shape is a little bit unusual. It's not quite circular, but all pretty nice, feels nice in the hand, and you've got these clicky buttons on the wheel that aren't always the most accurate, but do the job compared to some of the buttons you get in the Tesla. Now, in terms of storage, it does look pretty good on paper. You can see big open area in the middle there that's good for storing pretty much anything you can fit. Not great if you're storing stuff that you want to keep away from prying eyes, but there is a glove box for that you do open through the middle screen. It's pretty small. It's good for wallets and keys and things like that you don't want to keep in the open area. This tray opens up to some more space underneath there, where you've got 2 USB ports compared to the Tesla's 1. Wireless phone charger as well, heated steering wheel, got 2 pop-out cup holders here that you can see put things in, or you can move them in or just get one. It closes in 2 stages, which is kind of cool. Door pockets are pretty big. You can see they've got this kind of cool fabric-like lining to them. However, you can see there's no space to store a bottle. So if you want to put a bottle in there, I've got one here, it sort of just rolls around. The minute you accelerate or brake, that just goes flying back and forth. There's no dedicated cutout other than these cup holders for storing a bottle in this cabin, which is a little bit annoying. Now, notice the cabin is generally quite minimalist in its design. Now, that does make it look cooler and make it look a bit more Scandinavian in feel. However, it does help Volvo save a little bit of money, if we're being honest. Number one, this glove box is in the center, not over on the left-hand side, which means Volvo doesn't have to actually switch where it puts the mechanisms for left and right-hand drive cars. Number two, these window switches, you can see there are only two in the center, so they control the front doors, or when you press this rear button, they switch to controlling the rear. It's great, however, that button is just fiddly, it's not very responsive, and it's really hard to see in the light when you're driving. It's just unnecessarily distracting, and I don't know what was wrong with 4 window switches on the doors, like pretty much every other car. Other things, you've got a sound bar across the dash. There's no speakers in these front doors. Again, something that also makes them a little bit lighter as well as cheaper to make. Sound is pretty good, though it's not as good as the stereo system in that Tesla, even though it does have Harman Kardon branding in this Volvo. In terms of amenities, you've got a wireless phone charger down here, heated front seats as well as a steering wheel, as I mentioned before, and ambient lighting on the dashboard, which looks cool at night, has a bunch of different modes you can customize. It's not quite as customizable as that Tesla is. Now, in terms of materials, you've got some leather feeling surfaces on the dash when you touch them, as well as center armrest, but they're not particularly soft, at least not compared to that Tesla. As well as this sort of plastic-like trim on the dash. I guess it's recycled and it looks funky when you first look at it, at least from a distance. When you touch it, it just feels like cheap plastic and it's not fantastic. Same thing goes for materials on the doors, as well as down here, some hard plastics around the place. So I guess the Tesla has as well, but they're a little bit more noticeable in this Volvo. We'll point out these door handles. They are proper metal. They do feel really nice. And yeah, premium feeling bit that does make up for some of those slightly cheaper surfaces around the place. All right, let's head to the back seat, starting with that Tesla. The space in the back here is pretty decent. I'm 6'1". This driver's seat is where I sit. You can see I have a little bit of knee room, not too much, but still enough to be comfortable. But I don't really have much toe room there. I'm kind of jammed under the seat in front with this seat as low as it can go, which is where I prefer to sit. And you can see my hair is just touching the glass roof, which, by the way, is standard across the range and does heat up the cabin a little bit in summer. You do have to work the climate control that little bit harder, but overall it does bring a lot of light into the cabin and does make this feel a little bit more special, a little bit more interesting inside than it would otherwise. Now, the middle seat is on the smaller side. The Volvo is in the same boat, as we'll explore in a second. But unlike the Volvo, Tesla has carved out this area under the center console. So if you're sitting in the middle, you can sort of slide your feet forward and still get decent room under that screen, which we'll touch on in a moment. It's a cool little benefit of this EV platform. You've got a battery under the floor, so the floor is completely flat, and it just gives you the space you wouldn't otherwise have in a petrol car that has to have a gearbox running through this space. In terms of amenities, you've got 2 USB-C ports in addition to the one up front, which is less than you'll see in the Volvo. Map pockets on both front seats, bottle holders in the doors that are actually big enough for a full bottle, and they are flock lined like the ones in the front. It's a cool touch that shows that Tesla has gone the extra mile there. Other things, you've got a fold down center armrest with a pair of cup holders, 1, 2, 3 top tether points, as well as 2 ISOFIX points for installing child seats. Now, worth noting while we're back here, these door handles, obviously, if in case of emergency, you can open the door with a manual latch, but for the most part, you have these buttons. You press the button, open the electric latch, and does that. It will have your passengers scrambling around for the first time they get in this car, but after a while you get used to it and you just figure out, you press the button and the door opens. It's pretty simple. Now, in terms of this big 8-inch screen here, this is new for the facelift that was brought in last year. You can control things like climate control, where your air goes, as well as put videos on, YouTube, Netflix, Twitch streaming, and also play games. Things you've got in the front screen as well, but beach buggy racing, so I can race a beach buggy, connect my phone, and all sorts of fun stuff. It's a really cool feature for kids in particular, and something you don't always see at a car at this price, and something that you don't really see until you're spending 6 figures or more on a new car. You've also got heated seats in the outboard positions, as well as some nice leather-like materials on the doors. It does feel quite nice back here. It's common for car companies to sort of cheapen out on the materials in the back seats, but Tesla has not. That's really great to see. All right, let's head to the Volvo. Now, I probably don't need to say much. You can just see what it's like in the back of the Volvo EX30. This seat is set up for where I drive. I'm 6'1", as a reminder. As you can see, my knees are jammed up into this front seat. It's not very comfortable. Headroom is pretty good though, compared to the Tesla under this glass roof, which is, again, standard with this Ultra model of the EX30. And toe room is a little bit better than that Tesla as well. But yeah, it's not very comfortable for someone of my height, though if you had a shorter driver and a shorter passenger, kids perhaps, it might be a little bit better. Now, you have no rear air vents, unlike the Tesla, no fold-down center armrest. These door pockets are pretty small. This water bottle is pretty flexible, I'd say. So it does just fit, but you really have to jam it in there, and it's not going to fit any sort of hard, fixed metal bottle. 2 map pockets on the back of the front seats, with some little bit of storage, a pull-out storage tray in the back of the center console, and your window switches are up here as well. 2 USB-C ports, 3 top tether points, and 2 ISOFIX anchors as well. Unlike the Tesla, there's no cutout space in the back of the center console for sliding the middle passenger's legs, and this car is even narrower than that Tesla, so there's even less space for the middle passenger. Overall, it's a pretty cramped space back here, especially for adults. For kids, it might be okay, but yeah, best used for occasional use only. Right, let's check out the boots of both cars. Here's where there are even more differences between these two cars. The Tesla's boot is almost twice the size of the Volvo's, 594 litres versus 318 litres. And while the opening is small, there are far more cubby holes and underfloor areas than the Swedish car. You can see massive underfloor storage area that's large enough for this handy suitcase I prepared earlier. The boot is deeper, wider and taller than that Volvo. There are storage spaces on the side. And yeah, it's a really, really big space that's far more practical than the boot in the other car. If we head over there, you can see there is some underfloor storage in this Volvo, but it's far smaller and it's best only for cables and things like that. You can fit a backpack, but if I try and fit this suitcase, yeah, it's not going to close. You can fit a couple of these suitcases side by side, but even that's that carry-on bag put in that way, you wouldn't really fit much more than that, whereas a Tesla has so much more space to give. It's definitely the Tesla that takes the win on boot space, 100%. Both these cars have hands-free power tailgates, but while the Tesla has illumination, the Volvo has a 12-volt socket and some tie-down points. Where the Volvo claws back some more points is in what you get in the boot as standard. You get a charging cable as well as a tyre repair kit for the purchase price. Neither of these cars has a spare wheel, but if you want a tyre repair kit and a charging cable in the Tesla, you have to pay a couple $100 each on the Tesla store. It's a bit annoying that these things aren't included in the purchase price and you have to pay extra for them. Both cars have a storage area under the bonnet, but whereas the Tesla's is large enough to fit a carry-on suitcase, the Volvo's can't fit much more than the charging cable. The seats fold down 60-40 in both cars for more space, but the heavier portion is on the curb side in the Tesla. Alright, behind the wheel of the Model 3, and the first thing to talk about here is the controls. As you mentioned, the indicators are now on the steering wheel, and it is a bit awkward for the first half an hour or so, and occasionally when you're in a roundabout and you have some steering lock applied, it is a bit of an odd movement. For the most part, it's something we got used to quite quickly, and I think you will too if you buy this car. What we didn't get used to as quickly was the gear shifter. It's a slider on the right side of the touchscreen. It does get a little bit easier to use the more you drive the car, but still, it's just needlessly clumsy, and I don't know what was wrong with the stalk behind the wheel. It's just frustrating and really just could be better. There is a mode you can activate where the car will assume what gear you're going to pull into next. So for example, if you nose into a parking space, lock the car, come back to it, it will assume you'll need reverse to get back on the way out, and you can tap the brake and it'll just do that automatically. It's not perfect, and you do still obviously have to check what gear you're in to make sure you don't have an accident, but still, even though Tesla has tried to make this solution a bit better, a stalk like the old Model 3 would have been better than both of these. As for the rest of the driving experience, it is really, really good. The power from this long-range variant is immense. It's tricky to get an exact kilowatts figure from Tesla, but what matters is that 0 to 100 time. 4.4 seconds claimed, 4.6 seconds as tested. If you give it a bit of a punch, it's got an unbelievable amount of speed. Quicker than any V8 Commodore or Falcon that rolled out of the factory a number of years ago. It's more than enough power for any situation and never feels short on grunt. Not a surprise, we think it's in the region of 300 plus kilowatts. What you need to know is it's a really, really quick car. And obviously there's a performance version on top of this if you want even more speed. Response on the accelerator pedal is instant, and I mean instant. It pushes you in the back of your seat with the slightest touch of the pedal. There is a chill mode available to dial down some of that power if you have a family member driving who isn't as confident behind the wheel. But still, there's an incredible amount of power here, and performance fans won't feel disappointed. Put up now to a parking space, going to do a quick test of that shifter. So coming to a stop. When you get to about 5 k's an hour, the slider appears on the right side of the screen. Swipe down to put it in reverse, and then cameras activate and things. It gives you a beep to confirm it's registered your action. Do my little maneuver. There you go, reverse. And then to enter it in drive, you swipe up and then pull away. It is for the most part pretty good, but it occasionally just misses a beat or misses a maneuver, and there's some room for improvement there. But of course, a stalk on the behind the steering wheel would be better than all of this. That all-wheel drive system gives you great grip off the line. There's never much wheel spin, and any wheel spin there is controlled very quickly by that traction control system. It's one of the best out there, and it really shuts down any sort of wheel slip before you've even noticed it. The steering, it's quite quick and darty. It's a very quick rack, a bit of an artificial feel to it, and it does have some heft to it, which I do quite like, even in its lightest mode. Not everyone will like that. I'm personally a fan, but definitely worth taking a test drive before you sign on the dotted line. The ride is one thing that's improved massively with this updated Model 3 late last year. The old one was quite jittery and quite firm over most bumps. It got quite tiresome after a long drive. This is a big improvement. It's not a magic carpet by any means. It's not pillowy soft, but there's a great balance between comfort on city bumps and control in the corners, because after all, this car does still handle very well. Those hand-cooked tyres, they are eco tyres, but they do a pretty good job of keeping this car planted on the ground. Suspension doesn't have too much body roll. As I said before, that steering is precise and quite direct. Makes it a really fun car to drive and quite a confidence-inspiring one to push hard on a country road. The brakes are another highlight of this Model 3. You only get one choice, it's a full one-pedal mode, so you can come to a full stop without having to touch the brake pedal, and it really does work. It's quite a strong regenerative braking when you lift off the accelerator. It does feel like you've just put your foot on the brake pedal. And I have to say the transition between regenerative braking and the normal friction brakes, the disc brakes that are behind the wheels, is very smooth. It's almost imperceptible, even under a pretty hard emergency stop. Some buyers might like to be able to turn that regen braking off. You used to be able to do that in Tesla cars. For the past 12 months or so, that hasn't been an option. As I mentioned before, that speed display is on the main infotainment screen. There's no instrument display directly in front of your eyes. I will say we prefer a head-up display or something ahead of the driver's eye line, but still you do get used to it and you do learn to look down and to the left rather than down and straight. Something you get used to over time, though again, it isn't ideal. In terms of active safety technology, this car has Tesla's Autopilot suite, which is its name for adaptive cruise control and lane centering assist. The full self-driving system available in the US isn't offered in Australia in its full form just yet. It does work pretty well, and I have to say, it's not the best system out there, but it's also not the worst. You do have to really put your trust in it that it's going to actually follow the lane, and it is quite decisive in its movements with the steering wheel. It does do a good job. It doesn't drift out of its lane. It doesn't ping-pong between the lane markings like some current Chinese cars. The Volvo is not one of them, even though both these cars are made in China. The Model 3 ticks most of the boxes for safety, with the exception of rear cross traffic alert, which is a feature that tells you when there's a car coming when you're reversing out of a parking space and you can't see. It's also worth calling out these parking sensors. You have them at the front and the rear, but they're just powered by cameras. There are no actual ultrasonic sensors. It's a change for the latest Model 3 update in Australia late last year. I have to say, they're just not as good as the old ultrasonic sensors in the previous model were. They're prone to being too cautious or not cautious enough, and they're not particularly good in wet weather. They just freak out and just sometimes say, park assist failed, and completely give up. Not a very good change, and I wish Tesla goes back to the ultrasonic sensors with a future update. Tesla does not provide traditional power and battery capacity specifications for its cars. However, it is estimated the Model 3 long range has a usable battery capacity of about 78 kilowatt hours. And its dual motors, one front, one rear, have a theoretical maximum power output of 331 kilowatts. Tesla does claim a 0 to 100 km/h acceleration time of 4.4 seconds. In our testing, we saw repeatable 4.6 second sprints, as well as emergency braking from 100 km/h to 0 in 37.9 meters, acceptable for a car of this size and 1.8 tonne weight. Driving range in European WLTP testing is a claimed 629 kilometers, while Tesla claims fast charging up to 250 kilowatts. Alright, let's head to the Volvo. On paper, the Volvo starts with a performance disadvantage. After all, it's less powerful and only rear-wheel drive. By no means is this a slow car. 0 to 100 in 5.6 seconds as tested. There's more than enough power for overtaking, zipping into gaps in the city, as well as sporty country road driving when you want to enjoy this car. Now, it's rear-wheel drive, so it can break traction at times if you're being really enthusiastic with the right pedal, whereas the Tesla is sorted and planted in all conditions. But by no means is it unruly or are the tyres too bad. These are Goodyear tyres. They're not the best, but also not the worst. Now, in terms of the power delivery, it's not quite as immediate as that Tesla is, which really shoves you into the back of your seat. If you give it a bit, it does have pretty decent punch. By no means is this a slow car, as I said before. The ride is on the firmer side. Of course, you're on 20-inch wheels. That's a really big wheel for such a small car. It is sporty and you do feel bumps more than you might like. It's not a magic carpet. It does handle sharper bumps on the road, not quite as nicely as that Tesla. The Model 3 is a car that we think rides better overall. Now, because it's an SUV rather than a sedan, there is a little bit more body roll than that Tesla, of course, and it does feel a touch more top-heavy in corners. But this does handle really, really well for what it is. It's super quick steering, nice and quick and darty like that Tesla. Not quite as sharp as that car, but you got a choice of 3 modes, and the steering in this car does go lighter than the Tesla, which a lot of drivers will prefer. The brakes are a weak point in this Volvo. You do have a choice of normal regenerative braking as well as a one-pedal mode, but neither is as strong as that Tesla, which obviously only has a one-pedal mode as standard. And the transition point between regenerative braking and the actual friction disc brakes, you're trying to pull the car up to reach a set of traffic lights, for instance, is not very well blended in this Volvo. It's quite pronounced and it really does jolt you forward and you really don't expect it. There's definitely some work that needs to be done there from Volvo to make this calibration of the region a little bit smoother. On the highway, this car is a touch louder than that Tesla, particularly in tyre noise, but it's a very small difference, and both these cars are very quiet compared to a petrol-powered vehicle. Now on the highway, all the safety aids are very well tuned, adaptive cruise control, lane centering, it all feels very natural, it's easy to activate, and there aren't really any issues or things that we've experienced. Though we have found the forward collision warning system to be on the sensitive side, thinking about to have an accident when there's nothing in front of you, or you're getting a little bit too close to the car ahead. Not the worst by any means, but still could be a little bit better. Now, other things to mention, visibility is pretty good at the front and out the sides. The window at the back is on the smaller side, though not quite as bad in terms of visibility as the Tesla. As with the Tesla, your speedometer is on the main screen rather than an instrument display in front of your eyes. Both are pretty similarly placed when you drive these cars, but I do find the Volvos does seem a little bit further away and further out of your main line of sight. And both these cars would benefit from having an instrument display or a head-up display directly in front of the driver, but I do find the Volvos, out of the two, is the harder to see. Also worth mentioning, the turning circles definitely much smaller in this Volvo than the Tesla. Tesla is of course a physically larger car, but the Volvo just feels easier to maneuver and nicer to drive around tight city streets. The EX30 single motor extended range Ultra is powered by a single rear electric motor developing 200 kilowatts and 343 newton meters, fed by a battery pack with a 64 kilowatt hour usable capacity. Volvo claims 462 kilometers of driving range in European WLTP testing. It also quotes a 5.3 second 0 to 100 km/h time. We saw a best of 5.6 seconds in our testing, as well as an outstanding 100 km/h to zero braking distance of 35.7 meters, which is well within performance car territory. We put these cars through a series of tests to determine real-world energy consumption around town and on the highway, as well as recharging times. Volvo claims energy consumption of 17.5 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers, while Tesla claims 14 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers. Over extensive testing of both cars in city, country and highway conditions, we returned indicated energy use of 19.2 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers in the Volvo and 15.1 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers in the Tesla. Over a 110 km/h highway range test loop, we saw a thirsty 19.9 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers in the Volvo and an impressively frugal 14.5 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers in the Tesla, equating to 320 kilometers and 540 kilometers of projected highway driving range respectively. Our testing saw a 10 to 80% fast charge completed in 28 minutes for the Volvo and 33 minutes for the Tesla. Keep in mind the Tesla charges faster, but it has a larger battery pack. The Volvo EX30 is a welcome entry into the Australian market. It looks great, it's got a minimalist interior, it's well equipped for the money, and it drives very nicely. If you're after a smaller car, or if you're a current Volvo owner looking to go electric, it could be the perfect choice for you. But if you're after a futuristic, ground-up EV that feels like a Tesla inside, you're better off with the original. There isn't really a whole lot wrong with the Model 3. It's more spacious inside, the technology is more intuitive, the performance of this long-range model is excellent, it has class-leading energy efficiency, and that value for money equation is hard to beat. There are some gripes, those indicators on the steering wheel, the gear shifter on the touchscreen, and some of the other ergonomic decisions. But overall, for this price, it's hard to recommend anything else. That's why the Model 3 wins this test. If you enjoyed this video, please click like to stay up to date with our latest videos, hit subscribe and that little notification bell. And of course, for the full written review on both of these cars, as well as a comparison, head to Drive.com.au.